Many of us here today would have had the works of A.A. Milne read to us as children, and read them to our children in turn. Dave was no exception. Here are two poems you'll probably recognise. The first is in no way an accurate description of him. The knight whose armour didn't squeak. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Of all the knights in Appledore, the wisest was Sir Thomas Thom. He multiplied as far as 4, and knew what 9 was taken from to make 11. He could write a letter to another knight. No other knight in all the land could do the things which he could do. Not only did he understand the way to polish swords, but knew what remedy a knight should seek whose armour had begun to squeak. And if he didn't fight too much, it wasn't that he did not care for blips and buffetings and such, but felt that it was hardly fair to risk by frequent injuries a brain as delicate as his. His Castle Thom, was set conveniently on a hill, and daily, when it wasn't wet, he paced the battlements until some smaller knight who couldn't swim should reach the moat and challenge him. Or sometimes, feeling full of fight, he hurried out to scour the plain, and seeing some approaching knight, he either hurried home again or hid. And when the foe was past, blew a triumphant trumpet blast. One day, when good Sir Thomas Thom was resting in a handy ditch, the noises he was hiding from, though very much the noises which he'd always hidden from before, seemed somehow less. Or was it more? The trotting horse, the trumpet's blast, the whistling sword, the armour's squeak, these, and especially the last, had clattered by him all the week. Was this the same, or was it not? Something was different. But what? Sir Thomas raised a cautious ear and listened as Sir Hugh went by. And suddenly he seemed to hear, or not to hear, the reason why the stranger made a nicer sound than other knights who lived around. Sir Thomas watched the way he went. His rage was such he couldn't speak. For years they called him down in Kent the knight whose armour didn't squeak, yet here and now he looked upon another knight whose squeak had gone. He rushed to where his horse was tied. He spurred it to a rapid trot. The only fear he felt inside about his enemy was not how sharp his sword, how stout his heart, but has he got too long a start? Sir Hugh was singing, hand on hip, when something sudden came along and caught him, a terrific blip, right in the middle of his song. Oh, a thunderstorm, he thought, of course, and toppled gently from his horse. Then said the good Sir Thomas Thom, dismounting with a friendly air, "Allow me to extract you from the heavy armour that you wear. At times like these, the bravest knight may find his armour much too tight." 100 yards or so beyond the scene of brave Sir Hugh's defeat, Sir Thomas found a useful pond, and, careful not to wet his feet, he brought the armour to the brink and flung it in, and watched it sink. So ever after, more and more, the men of Kent would proudly speak of Thomas Thom of Appledore, the knight whose armour didn't squeak, whilst Hugh, the knight who gave him best, squeaks just as badly as the rest. King's breakfast. The king asked the queen, and the queen asked the dairymaid, Could we have some butter for the royal slice of bread? The Queen asked the dairymaid. The dairymaid said, certainly. I'll go and tell the cow now, before she goes to bed. The dairymaid, she curtsied and went and told the Alderney. Don't forget the butter for the royal slice of bread. The Alderney said sleepily, you'd better tell His Majesty that many people nowadays like marmalade instead. The dairymaid said, fancy, and went to Her Majesty. She curtsied to the Queen and she turned a little red. Excuse me, Your Majesty, for taking on the liberty, but marmalade is tasty if it's very thickly spread. The Queen said, oh, and went to His Majesty. Talking of the butter for the royal slice of bread, many people think that marmalade is nicer. Would you like to try a little marmalade instead? The King said, bother. And then he said, oh, dearie me. The King sobbed, oh, dearie me, and went back to bed. Nobody could call me a fussy man. I only want a little bit of butter for my bread. The Queen said, there, there, and went to the dairymaid. The dairymaid said, there, there, and went to the shed. The cow said, there, there, I didn't really mean it. Here's milk for his porringer and butter for his bread. The Queen took the butter and brought it to His Majesty. The King said, oh, butter, eh? And bounced out of bed. Nobody, he said, as he kissed her tenderly. Nobody, he said, as he slid down the banisters. Nobody, my darling, could call me a fussy man, but I do like a little bit of butter to my bread.